So how has your club's most expensive summer signing got on this season? Let's talk about it. Guys, welcome back to another video and to another tier list. I really enjoy doing these ones, and today we're going to be taking the journey back to the summer transfer window and going over each championship club's most expensive buy in the summer and ranking them into the following tier list. Now, it does come with the caveat that some championship clubs didn't spend any money in the summer, and so in those circumstances I've just picked out one of the free transfers that you picked up throughout the summer months. We're not including any loan deals in this one, but I'm very interested to get your guys' takes on all of these players. So do get your thoughts down below and do leave a like if you do going to enjoy. But let's just go ahead and jump into this tier list. So these are the categories that we're going to be ranking all of the players by. They've either been a poor signing, average, solid, good, or very good. We may as well start out with the most expensive summer signing, and that goes to Harry Wilson. I'm going to go ahead and pop him in that very good tier. Now, to be fair to Wilson, it would have been fairly easy for him to have been a flop this season, given that he was the only summer signing made by a championship club who went for over 10 million in the summer. You know, I remember a lot being made of it at the time. Even I said, I'm not sure if this represents great value for money, but 23 goal contributions so far this season. He's been one of the best players in the championship, has that partnership with Mitrovic, and yeah, there's no doubting that with Fulham looking like they're going to run away with the league, it was a good signing and he has been very good for them so far. In terms of someone on the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm going to put Sam Surridge into that poor category. Obviously, we're ranking Sam Surridge here off the Stoke transfer because he was their most expensive deal done during the summer transfer window, and he now no longer plays for them. Bit of a funny signing, all things considered. I think they paid over 2 million for him to get him away from Bournemouth. He hit the ground running, scored on his debut, but quite quickly faded into the background and was reduced to sort of substitute appearances coming off the bench. He didn't really seem like a great stylistic fit into that team, and it seemed like Michael O'Neill didn't really know how to properly utilise him within that setup, and then obviously they went ahead and sold him in January. So maybe not the worst signing because they at least got some of a return on the money that they paid for him with what Forest bought him for, but overall, from Stoke's point of view, a pretty poor deal. Preston North End's Ali McCann's a really interesting one, and to be honest, I'm not sure where to place him because I think that I'm with all the North End fans in thinking that Ali McCann is an absolutely cracking championship player in terms of a ball winner, someone who's really tenacious, got loads of energy and quality on the ball. I think he ticks so many boxes, but he's just not been able to get into our team so far this season because of the performances of, you know, Ben Whiteman, Daniel Johnson and Alan Brown. With Ryan Ledson out for the rest of the season, I'm hopeful that now he'll get a few more opportunities to show what he can do, but at the moment you'd probably put him into solid, but I think he's such a good player that I still think he's a really good signing for Preston. But yeah, I'm probably between these two for Ali McCann because he's not had that much of an impact on our season so far because he's not really been given the game time. We'll go for Swansea's Michael Obafemi next up, and I'm going to put him into the solid signing category. I think he had to be pretty patient in terms of waiting for his chance so far this season because obviously it was Joel Perreault at the start of the season who absolutely exploded onto the scene and was really their main goal threat. I think Obafemi had some issues going on behind the scenes as well at the start of the season, but now he's got his place in the team. I think that Swansea fans are finally seeing what he's capable of. I think 5 goals for him so far this season. Certainly picked up those numbers in the second half of the season so far, and is someone who I'm excited to see, probably more so going into next season when Swansea have added a few other parts into that side as well. I'm going to put George Saville into the solid signing tier as well. Saville's been quite a tough one to rank really because I think his season's been a little bit up and down, quite similar to how Millwall have been throughout this season really. I think he started out pretty well, but his performances definitely took a lull around about sort of like October, November time. But since the start of the new year and since Millwall have gone on this unbeaten run, I think that Saville's actually put in a string of really good performances. You know what you're going to get from a player like Saville, loads of energy in the middle, and I think that based on recent performances you can maybe push him up to good, but overall I'd say it's been a pretty solid signing on his return to Millwall. Blackpool's Jordan Lawrence-Gabriel, I'm going to say he's been a pretty good signing. I think for the money that they outlaid on him, the fact that Blackpool have 2 really good fullbacks vying for that position in Dujon Sterling and Lawrence-Gabriel, the only real clanger I can think back to him making this season was maybe that red card against Huddersfield, but other than that, he's been pretty good. Troy Deeney, I'm going to put into the solid category, I think. I'm pretty sure that Birmingham just used the summer transfer window as an opportunity to pick up some free transfers. Troy Deeney was one of them, and overall, I'd say that Birmingham are probably a better team with Troy Deeney in. His goal scoring record has been pretty decent. 7 goal contributions from 14 starts for Birmingham so far this season. The only thing that's really hampered him has been that recent injury that has meant he's been out for the last couple of months. Next then for Alex Mowatt, I'm going to say he's been a good signing for West Brom. I think that had you have asked me this at the start of the season, I would have probably put him into that very good category, considering, you know, they picked him up on a free. Last season at Barnsley was one of the best midfielders in the league. I still think he's been good for West Brom, but maybe not quite at those levels. I think that this season's been a little bit more inconsistent for Alex Mowatt. I certainly think that his performance has tailed off a little bit when West Brom have recently been struggling. But to be fair to him, his last handful of performances under Steve Bruce, I think he's been looking back to his former self, and on a free transfer, West Brom were never really going to go all too wrong with that deal, were they? In terms of an average signing so far this season, I'm not sure what the reception to this one's going to be like, but I'm going to put Mowatt and Payero into that average category. The weight of expectation was always going to be on someone like Payero from minute one because of the money that Borough outlaid on him. I think he was the second most expensive summer transfer, cost Middlesbrough around about that 6 million mark in the end, I think, and I still think there's a player in there, and the reason I'm not putting him in that bottom category is because we have seen glimpses of what he's capable of doing so far this season, but just 12 appearances for Borough in the Championship. He sort of struggled with injuries, and at times at the start of the season it seemed like Warnock couldn't particularly fancy him, so when he does get himself back fully fit, I'm interested to see how Wilder tries to integrate him into the setup, but because of all the money that was spent on him, I don't think I can justify putting him any higher than average, to be honest, so far. Does smell a little bit of sort of like João Carvalho to Forest at the moment, that sort of transfer, which I hope it's not, because I hope to see those sorts of players go on and really thrive in the Championship. In terms of someone else for that very good category, Lee Nichols, straight in there, one of the best signings of the summer. Huddersfield, I don't believe, spent any money during the summer transfer window, so I've just picked out one of their free transfers, and Lee Nichols has made such a difference to this defence, which was shipping so many goals last season. If you've not watched the deeper dive we did on Huddersfield last week, make sure to go ahead and check that video out, but it highlighted the role that Nichols has in this Huddersfield squad and how instrumental he has been to them turning around their defensive record this season. Brian Ojeda at Nottingham Forest is a really weird one, to be honest, because according to transfer marks, Forest laid out around £2 million for him during the summer, and to be honest, looking back on a few of the deals they did during the summer transfer window, they are looking quite questionable at the moment, but he's barely kicked a ball for them this season. I'm going to have to put him into that poor signing category because we've literally just not seen him really kick a ball for Forest. It doesn't seem like he's anywhere close to their matchday squad at the moment either. Whether he was a signing for the future, I don't know. You know, he is a Paraguay international, I believe. But yeah, sheerly through not really seeing him so far this season, we're going to have to put him down as a poor signing. Victor Gyökeres at Coventry is a really interesting one because he absolutely exploded over the first couple of months of the season. He was scoring goals at probably quite an unsustainable rate looking back on it. Then he had a little bit of a goal drought in the middle of the season when things seemed to dry up, had a few sort of frustrating performances where he'd missed a few easy chances, but seems to be getting the goal scoring touch back. And I think that if you'd have said to Coventry fans at the start of the season that Gyökeres would have hit double figures already for this season, I think they'd have said it was a very good signing. So yeah, considering how he's progressed from last season to this, I'd still put Gyökeres down as a very good signing for them. Derby obviously couldn't spend any money during the summer transfer window due to the restrictions they were under, but the player I picked out for them to talk about was Ravel Morrison, who, to be honest, I'd say has been a pretty solid signing for them, maybe even pushing on good. I think in the first portion of the season, the only thing that he was sort of missing from his game was a final product, but he's added that in the last few weeks. He's got 3 goals now over his last 3 games for Derby. The only thing that potentially lets him down a little bit is probably his decision making at times, but overall, still a pretty skillful footballer, who I think has been a solid addition to this Derby side this season. Next then for Bournemouth's Ryan Christie. I am quite a big fan of Ryan Christie. I think that players that are quite easy on the eye to watch, and Christie's certainly one of them. Started out life at Bournemouth really quite promisingly. His creative numbers have been good so far this season. He ranks among some of the best Championship players in terms of key passes, and probably the only thing that lets him down a little bit is he can be maybe a little bit wasteful in front of goal. I think that if he sharpened up a little bit in terms of his actual goal output, he'd be, you know, a Premier League player in waiting, really. I think only Dom Solanke's had more shots than Ryan Christie in that Bournemouth squad so far this season. Christie obviously only has the 3 goals to show for it. And between the top 2 categories, I think in the end he cost around about 2.5 million, just over 2 million, which, to be honest, I think represents decent value for money for what they've got out of him so far this season. So I would say that Ryan Christie has been a very good signing. Rob Atkinson at Bristol City next up, and this is quite a tough one to judge. Bristol City fans, where would you place him? Because he started life out at Bristol City unbelievably well. You know, the first couple of months I'd have probably had him in my team of the season. I remember going to Ashton Gate early on in the year. It was a 0-0 game, but he was absolutely dominating at the back. His ability to sort of bring the ball out from defence and things like that. But in the second half of the season, I think things have been a little bit more inconsistent for him. He's been derailed by a couple of injuries, which has meant he's been sort of in and out. His form's been a little bit more sporadic in that time, and to obviously take into consideration that Bristol City currently have the 3rd worst defensive record in the league. I'm between good and solid for him. I think that maybe with how things have potentially tailed off for him a little bit, I'd put him into that solid tier, but I still do think there's a very good player in there. It's just that things haven't quite gone as smoothly as they were in the first few months for him. Junior Hoilett, I'd probably say, has been a solid signing for Reading, considering that they couldn't really spend any money during the summer transfer window. I think that he's come in and added a little bit of quality whenever he's played. Also got an absolute worldie in the locker as well. Andre Dozzell at QPR, another player who I'd probably chuck into that solid category. He's had moments for QPR, gives them something a little bit different in midfield, albeit isn't really the first name on the team sheet. Sheffield United didn't really do all too much business over the summer transfer window. They were mostly utilising the loan market. One permanent deal they did do was for Grimsby youngster Joe Starbuck, who we've not seen in the Sheffield United first team so far this season, so just going to put him into being an average signing so far. He was one that was bought for the future, and in years to come we'll be able to see the success of that transfer. Mark McGuinness came over from Arsenal to Cardiff in the summer. I'm going to say he's been a pretty good signing for Cardiff. I think that initially he had a few shaky moments, especially when Cardiff were a little bit dodgy at the back and things like that, but he has definitely been a player who's benefited from Morrison coming in. The age he's at now, the performances that he's had, especially since the turn of the year, he'll be a player who Cardiff are looking to build around in years to come. Scored his first goal for Cardiff away at Preston as well, which I was in the stadium for, so yeah, I'd say good signing for Cardiff, all things considered. I'd also say that Alan Campbell for Luton has been a pretty good signing for them as well. I think fits Luton's play style down to a T in terms of the work rate endeavour from midfield, and what we're now seeing is a little bit more of an output from him in terms of a goal output from midfield as well. I think the Luton fans took to him pretty quickly, so yeah, for me I'd say he's been a pretty good signing for the money that they outlaid on him. Ollie Norburn at Peterborough is an interesting one because, I mean, they've had a disaster of a season so far, but I wouldn't really put that down to him, and in terms of his isolated deal, I actually think he's been pretty decent for them so far this season. Dare I say it, if Peterborough had had more players like Norburn, maybe they wouldn't be in this position that they're in at the moment. Obviously, it looked more than likely at one point throughout the January transfer window that he'd actually be leaving them, with Blackpool knocking on the door and could still be off come the summer. But in terms of a bit of tenacity, a bit of bite in midfield, he's completed more tackles than any other Championship midfielder so far this season, albeit sometimes can be a little bit limited on the ball. But I'm still going to say he's been a pretty good signing for what they paid for him and how he himself has looked alright in the Championship. Yeah, I'd still put that down as a good deal, even with the situation that Peterborough are in this season. Barnsley's Aaron Lear Iseka. I'm between the bottom two categories, if I'm being honest. He did have that one spell where it seemed like he'd finally found his feet at Oakwell, I think towards the end of October, where he started, consistently hitting the back of the net. I think in 3 consecutive games he scored, but he's not scored since then, and he just reminds me of Barnsley from the first half of the season when they were such a poor and turgid side. Because of the 3 goals he scored, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and put him in average, but yeah, not exactly one who's been on sparkling form this season. Tyler Smith, another one who's had quite a frustrating season for Hull. Finally got his first league goal the other week against Peterborough, and obviously had that moment in the FA Cup against Everton where, to be honest, he actually looked pretty decent, but throughout the majority of the season he's been really utilised as sort of a bit part player who's not played that many minutes for Hull so far, so a tough one to judge. I'm going to chuck him into average for the time being. Could be a good player in years to come, but this season we've not really seen all too much from him. And then to finish off with Blackburn Rovers is Tayo Adun. I think I'd give him the benefit of the doubt and throw him into being a solid signing so far this season. I think that when he's on that left-hand side, I do think that Blackburn get a little bit more out of Harry Pickering, but when he has had to come in this season, I think he's had his ups and downs, which is probably to be expected with a player of his age. But those are my personal selections for each Championship club's biggest summer signing in terms of the money that was outlaid on them and how I think they've all got on so far this season. I'm quite flexible between a lot of the categories. I think that some could easily be a category down, some could easily be a category up, but I want to know from you guys on these picks, where would you personally place these players and who do you think's had the best impact? Let me know down below. Apart from that though guys, that will now wrap it up for today's video, so if you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. Apart from that, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.